What's up guys, this is Brandon here from Gearist. And for what I think is the first time ever, we're going to be reviewing a sleeping pad today, and that is the Insulated Static V Lite from KLYMIT. While we here at Gearist certainly do spending time outside, even sleeping outside, whether it's on the ground or in a hammock, finding the right thing to sleep on is one of the most challenging parts of that. Not only because of the random pokey things that are on the ground that might be digging into you, but also because of the losing body heat through conduction to the ground. On top of that, even when you do find something that checks all those boxes, you're going to usually have a trade-off in weight, which is where this guy right here comes in. It's supposed to check all those boxes as well as keeping that weight down. So without any further ado, let's take a look at it. We're going to blow this up in just a couple of minutes, but before that, we're gonna look at it in its deflated form as I take it out of this included stuff sack, or just kind of storage bag as it were, which also has a lovely little flap right here on the inside that has an integrated patch kit for when you inevitably bust a hole in it, or your dog inevitably busts a hole in it. The main body of this sleeping pad is made from a durable 30 denier, yet really soft still polyester fabric that's going to cover the top and the bottom. Underlying all this 30 denier polyester synthetic that we've got on the top and bottom is something that I really don't think that people pay too much attention to, but it's actually quite important, and that is a laminate that is antimicrobial. I mean, come on, we sweat all the time when we're sleeping in bed. We know this. That's why mattresses weigh so much more when you get rid of them than when you get them. So why would it be any different when they're camping outside? On the inside of this guy, we've got KLYMIT with a K, not KLYMIT with a C, which is an Adidas fabric. KLYMIT with a K, which is what makes up the insulation part of this, and according to KLYMIT is exactly what slows the transfer of heat or cold air from the top half of the mat to the bottom half of the mat, or pad if you will. The layout of this sleeping pad itself is where a good deal of the technology comes in, and you can still see it without it being fully inflated. And the first thing that you're going to notice, and you will see this again in a minute when I do inflate it, is these V-shaped channels right here, which are what make up the insulated area of the pad. Now these V-shaped channels right here, the reason that they're important to sleeping on this comfortably is because they give a multi-access point of comfort. So if you've got straight channels going this way or straight channels going this way, what's going to happen is you've got those along a singular plane of your body. With these, you've got them shaped around different areas. So even if your elbow is sticking in here, it's not going to compromise the rest of that channel. It's rather going to have another channel under the rest of your body or something like that. The second thing, and this is something that I find really, really interesting and very ingenious, is that the space in between these channels, the wells if you will, are actually quite deep. But why is this important? Well, when you lay on a sleeping bag, no matter how warm it is, everything underneath you is being compressed, and so if it's down or synthetic down or what have you, whatever's underneath you is going to stop working, because it's not the down itself or synthetic material that keeps you warm, but rather it's the space in between the feathers or whatever synthetic material you've got going on that keeps you warm, because the body heats up those smaller areas instead of the larger area. Your body warms up. In this case, these deep wells allow a sleeping bag or something like that to then fill those wells and keep the insulation working to a large degree. While it's certainly not 100% of the insulation that you would get, say, on the top half of your body, it's still a huge improvement over something that would otherwise compress all the down in a particular sleeping bag. Framing the main V-shaped section are side rails, which we can see right here, and again, we will see these when we blow it up in just a second. These side rails are going to keep you comfortable. They're going to keep you in place, keep you from rolling off, and let you know where the edges of this sleeping pad are. And now we're going to actually talk about inflating this guy. The first thing that I want to point out is the inflation valve, which we see right here. Now, a lot of the time on a lot of sleeping pads, you're going to see valves where in order to get it to close, you've got to push down and twist. This is kind of a challenge sometimes if you're doing that with your tongue, unless you've got a really talented tongue like Gene Simmons or something like that. But for me, what you really just want to do is just be able to push that down and then lock it off. And that is exactly what KLYMIT has accomplished here. All you do literally is push this down with your teeth, your tongue, or your mouth, or whatever you've got, and then you can take your mouth away and twist it. Now, apart from that being one of my favorite parts, probably the crux of this guy for me is the ability to inflate it so rapidly. With regard to performance, before we actually get into all the insulation and that stuff and the comfort and what have you, let's actually inflate this thing. One of the interesting things that I saw when I read from KLYMIT how easy this was to inflate, or how quickly it would inflate, it says 10 to 15 breaths, and I was like, yeah, right. But then I inflated it with 10 breaths. Now, I'm not saying that right this second I'm going to inflate it with 10 breaths, but I'm going to try to inflate it with 10 breaths. So please count with me and let's see how quickly I can do it. Okay, so that impressed even me. That was 8 breaths. 8 flippin' breaths. I can't even believe that. And then I'm just gonna lock it down. So yeah, now I'll say this, that number one, I'm a former opera singer and former kind of really fast swimmer and endurance athlete, like many of you are. So inflating this in that 10 to 15 breaths is not necessarily going to be a huge challenge, but the point is that among other pads, this really, really inflates fast. That is crazy impressive to me. And you can see, I mean, look, I'm holding it up for you to see. Fully inflated, I'm knocking stuff all over the place, fully inflated. 8 breaths. And as I talked about earlier, you can see the deep wells in between the V-shaped channels as well as the side rails that we've got going on here, which keep your body in place. Now, let's talk about the insulation. When I had this guy in a hammock, which I love sleeping in a hammock, it's fantastic, but if you've ever slept in a hammock when it's below freezing, it can be really chilly, to say the least. So I've had this in a hammock above and below freezing. And below freezing, one of the things that you want to make sure is that it's under your entire body. Now, these side rails certainly help to keep it nice and lined up under your body. And so when you do that weird hammock roly-poly thing where you're trying to kind of situate yourself, it doesn't really roll out of the way. Like anything, over time, it might slip a little bit. You might have to readjust. Not a big deal. On the ground, in a straight-up tent, the insulation, this is very impressive. I mean, I was on ground at points that hadn't seen real sunlight because it had been under snow cover in like 3 months, and I didn't notice anything. And with that said, one of the things that was most impressive about this was how quiet it is. I mean, listen. Yeah, you can hear a little bit, but there's not really a whole ton of crinkling or anything like that that's going to keep you awake or otherwise disturb your sleep. Very, very solid stuff. As for comfort, I love the deep wells in between these things. Now, one of the things I will say is that if you're using a traditional sleeping bag, awesome. It's gonna rock. You're gonna get more insulation from the underside as well as the insulation from the pad itself. It's a really, really nice addition to have those deep wells where the insulation of a sleeping bag that you're using can be put into play. However, if you are using a sleeping bag that is of the ultralight variety, something like we checked out when we went to visit Packability Gear here in Golden, Colorado, one of the trademarks of an ultralight sleeping bag is that there's no back. And the reason is expressly what we talked about earlier, is because when you lay on it, your back compresses the insulation stops working, so why even have a back? In this case, if you're using a backless or ultralight sleeping bag or something like this, you might find it actually a little bit cooler than you would expect because of these deep wells right here. Whereas in an insulated, fully insulated sleeping bag, those are going to allow the insulation of that bag to work. In something that doesn't have a back, there's not really anything to fill in those channels, so you may have to figure out where exactly your tolerance lies with that. Also though, I should really say that I was very impressed with the sharper parts of my body, you know, like shoulders, hips, elbows, knees, all that kind of stuff, whether it's on my back or my side or my stomach or anything like that. I was impressed. These V-shaped channels really helped me to maintain comfort across that kind of those different positions, because again, it's not a static line, just a straight line across this way or straight line going down this way. Finally, I want to talk about the weight and packability of this guy. Now, you saw at the beginning of this review where I was showing you the included storage bag that it was in. Packs down nicely. I like to fold it over the 3 times, so 1 and then 2 again, roll it up, stuff it in that sack, which is a great way to store it in any bag that you've got. It's going to save a lot of space. Being in that sack is going to keep it out of the way and keep it nice and neat. Now, for the weight, the pad alone comes in at 19.4 ounces, and inside of the storage bag comes in at 20.2 ounces. No matter which way you look at it, it is very, very light, especially for an insulated pad, which is something that we mentioned at the top of this review. Now, does Klymit make a pad lighter than this? You bet your bippy they do. It is their Inertia X-Lite pad, which comes in at a ridiculous 6.1 ounces. However, nothing that is insulated the way that this is comes even close in terms of weight. The price tag on this guy comes in at $94, and even Klymit has things that are a little bit cheaper than that. However, with the weight, packability, and insulation that this thing provides, you're really going to be hard-pressed to find something that ticks all those boxes. This is a pad that is really dialed into the human body based on what we've got going on, our shoulders, our hips, our knees, what have you. This is something that is mapped to that body instead of just kind of a blank canvas of a pad, which can either be smooth top or straight channels that I keep on mentioning. This is something that is really, really dialed to the shape of the human body. And with that, I got to tell you that the first time I laid down on this thing, I was out. Granted, it was a hard day, but I was out in 5 minutes. Really, really excellent pad to check out. So if you're in the market for a new pad, definitely check the buy links down in the description below. Now guys, before you go anywhere, please don't forget to like and favorite this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That is a huge help to all of us here at Gearist. Helps support our channel, keeps what we're doing going, and we've got a lot of great things coming down the pipe for you. So be sure to subscribe, including new Gearist gear that's coming out. Those of you that ordered a Gearist hat and you have it, share it with the hashtag I'm Gearist on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, no matter where you are. And those of you that missed out and would like a hat, even if you're international, send us an email, we can talk about it. Definitely keep an eye out by subscribing to our channel because those will be coming back very soon. Now, our question of the day. And that is, what is your tolerance in terms of temperature for camping outside, whether it's in a hammock or a tent or what have you? Does it depend on the gear that you've got? Like for instance, if you go out and you're like, well, my tolerance is X, but if I had an insulated sleeping bag or insulated sleeping pad like this one, maybe it might be a little more. Let's hear your answers down in the comments section below. Guys, thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us today. If you've got any questions at all, don't hesitate to email info@gearist.com or just reach out to us on all of our social media outlets, which you see here on my right, your left. You can reach out to us there all the time. Please follow us, let us know what's up, comment on our Facebook page, comment down on the bottom of this video. We love to hear from you guys. Once again, thank you so much, and we will see you next time.